Okay, good afternoon and welcome. You should be YouTube, just Daf It. Today's Daf is Kesubos Daf and then Zion number 57. We have a great share for you today. Obviously, I do not have my father with me. He is staying in Yerushalayim, not in Telstone, so we don't know how many days we get him on the share, but hopefully a couple more times. And start on the bottom, Nivova Mabez 56b. Achse de Rabbi Rami Barachama, the last line. Sister Rami Rachama ben Siva Avia. She was married to Rav Avia. Yerkas Ksuvasa, she lost her Ksuba. Now, if you lose your Ksuba, according to Rameh, you're not allowed to be together. You're not allowed to sleep with your wife unless you have a Ksuba. Hasel Kamei Rav Yosef. They came in front of Rav Yosef for Psak Halacha. Amar Hu, Hachi Amar Rav Huda Amar Shmuel, Zu Divrei Rav That's the opinion of Rav Meir. Racham Omrim, Masha Adam Asisha Shai Mishal Shanim below Ksuba. Even 2 or 3 years, you can live with your wife without a written Ksuba. Amalei Abaye said, "V'hamar of Nachman, Amar Shmuel Locher Meir b'Gzerosav." Normally, even though when the Chum argue on Meir, we pass on the Chum over Meir because the Chumim are a majority. However, by Gzeros that Rav Meir instituted, the halacha follows him. So this is a Gzera. When I explain more in Enoch Ben Sion, the different there's actually 3 components to the actual basic Kesuva of Masayim for a Psula and Mana for an Almana. There's 3 components to this Ksuva. One a level Doraisa, one a level Rabbanan, and one a Machlokas Doraisa and the Rabbanan. I'm going to explain the various reasons why they expanded the original Ksuva, how it is expanded. But in terms of this thing that you have to have a Ksuva with you when you're together, right, for the Bia, that's a Gzeira D'Rabbanan according to Rav Meir. We'll explain that more in Yud Ben Sion. So the halacha follows Rav Meir, so they can't be together. So the Rav Yosef said, upon hearing that, Ihaki Zuk Sovla. If that's the case, so we pass like Rav Meir B'Gzerosov, write a ksuva for her. Kiyasar Rav Dimi, Amar Rabbi Shulman Pazi, Amar Rabbi Shulman Levi, Mishum Bar Kapora, Machlokes B'Tchila. We had a machlokes in our Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir, right? Could you stipulate and be mochel on part of the ksuva? Reb Meir says you can never be mochel on part of the ksuva. Rabbi Yehuda famously says that you could be mochel on part of the ksuva with an amira. That's what we're talking about in the Gemara, right? Even though you have a ksuva, you can just stipulate and say, yes, the woman can say, it's kilo, I got half of it. She can say that according to Reb Meir. No, you have to have the full mano masayim. So Bar Kapara says in the name of Rabbi Shulman Levi, Machlokes. Yeshua Ibn Levi says the name of Bar Kapara. Machlokes B'Tchila. Machlokes in the beginning. We'll see what this means in a second. B'Tchila. B'Sof l'Divrei Kol Eina Mocheles. The beginning, that's Machlokes in Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. At the end, whatever the end is, we'll see in a second. Everyone agrees. Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees she can't be mochel. Rabbi Yochanan argues Bein Bezu Machlokes. Both in the Tchila and Sof, there's Machlokes. Amar Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi explained, I got a personal explanation from Rabbi Yochanan. Yochanan explained, I personally don't argue on Rabbi Shulman Levi. My betchila the kamar Rabbi Shulman Levi. But Rabbi Shulman Levi says, right, machlokes betchila v'sof li'rakol ena mocheles. So what did he mean betchila? Tchila is chuppah. Tchila is chuppah, the beginning of the canopy. Practically, it means when you go into the canopy after you walk down the aisle to the chuppah, but in real halacha, it really means going under the canopy bed before the first bia for foreplay. That's what I think it is. Umay sof bia. And sof is the end of the bia, right? There's 2 parts of the bia. First there's foreplay, then there's chilas bia, where the Gemara in Yevamos says machlokes, either it's the atara goes into the vagina, or there's neshika sa'iver on the outside of the lips of the vagina. So that's tchilas bia. Self bia is when the man ejaculates inside the woman. So tchilas chuppah, my self bia, right? He was talking about the very beginning, right, when they go under the canopy bed for foreplay, and the self is when he ejaculates. Gamina ana bein bezu machlokas tchilas chuppah v'sof chuppah dehi tchilas bia. I said it's machlokas in both cases. I was talking about when they go into the canopy bed, and the end, not the end of the bia, the end of the chuppah, which is the same thing as tchilas bia. End of the chuppah and the foreplay is when they actually start the real intercourse. That's called intercourse, when the man penetrates or starts to penetrate the woman. So I don't agree. I don't disagree with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, right? I say ben bezubim machlokes. Let's talk about the first two stages, the tchilas chopa and the tchilas bia. However, at the end, right, the sof bia, that's where me and Yeshua ben Levi say there can no longer be mechila, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Kiasa Ravin came. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Shimon ben Levi, Shum bar Kapora, Machlokes l'basof. Ravin had a different version than Rav Dimi. He says, Rabbi Shimon ben Levi said, Machlokes l'basof. Machlokes, Ramei and Rabbi Yehuda is at the end. We'll see what it means in a second. In the beginning, whatever the beginning is, everyone agrees, even Rav Meir, this is unique, that Rav Meir admits, even though he holds Masna Mashakasav B'Torah, you can't do, by the Rabbanan, where they're asu chizik, like we learned in Daf It. Here, for some reason, they did allow you to do this. This needs to be explained. Even Rabbi Meir would agree. He says the machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda applies in both cases. Amar Rabbi Abau, it says, I personally heard from Yochanan, they don't argue on each other. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, at the end, right? The end. Sof chuppah, my tchila. Tchilas chuppah. Sof means end, which is the end of chuppah, which is tchilas bia. My tchilas chuppah. V'chikamina ana ben bezu machlokas tchilas bia v'sof bia. I was saying that machlokas is tchilas bia v'sof bia. So we agree basically. The machlokas, everyone agrees. Right? Meir and Yehuda agree that she could be mochel at tchilas what? Tchilas chuppah. Right, and the machlokas in Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda is by bein bezu, sof chopa, which is tchilas bia, and sof bia, and the end of the bia. So they don't argue on each other. Amar Rav Papa, upon hearing this, he loved Amar Rabbi Abau, the partially in Rabbi Yochanan. If Rabbi Abau hadn't said expressly that he heard this from Yochanan, the Ana of Rabbi Shimon Levi lo palgina, in both versions, Rav Dimi's version and Rabin's version, they don't argue. How about me, Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi pligi? I would have said they do argue. Rav Dimi and Rabin lo pligi. Rav Dimi and Rabin don't argue, right? We'd rather say that's machlokas Yochanan and Shimon Levi, which are actually saying svaras about the actual halacha, than people who are quoting in the name of Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi, which Rav Dimi and Rabin were reporting in the name of Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi. By sof, and what will we say? Sof dekama Rabin, sof chopa. My tchila dekama Rav Dimi, tchilas bia. Rav Dimi and Ravin would be agreeing, right? And Malchus would be between Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi. And the end, which Ravin said, would be Sof Chopa. And Tchila, that Rav Dimi says, Tchilas Bia. So Rav Dimi and Ravin wouldn't be arguing. Their Malchus would be between Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi. My Kamashma. What's Kamashma? What is Rabbi Papa coming to teach? Kamashma, the Pligi Trei Amorai at time of the Navshayu, below Pligi Trei Amorai, Ali Badachad Amora. Even though in this case it happens to be that it's Machlokas in Rav Dimi and Ravin and Rav Dimi were reporting what Rabbi Shimon Levi and Rabbi Yochanan said. So obviously one of them got the facts wrong, right? So we'd rather say the Machlokas in Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon Levi were arguing about the matter itself, because there Rashi explains Elu Direi Elokim Chayim. Basically, of course, the Gemara is full of Machlokas. Right? Does that mean that one opinion is right and one person is wrong? What one person is we passing like one opinion? Is the other person not considered Torah? Is it considered sheker? It's not a lie. They're both considered valid opinions, and that's the point of every machlokas in the Gemara. I've spoken about this elsewhere. Hashem gave the Torah, and He gave when Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan Nuri have different opinions, Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan have a different opinion, or Rebbe has a different opinion, Tanoim argue, Amoraim argue, arguing about something. It means those two opinions were all given to Har Sinai. Hashem gave about a certain halacha. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes there's 5 different valid opinions of how to understand this facet of Torah. Doesn't mean any of them are wrong. They're all valid opinions. It's our job in the Torah. That's why it's a living Torah, Torah Chayim, Torah Chayim, is that we, just like any debate that you have between people over a political issue or something like that, you can debate the Torah. And those people that are able to prove that point of view the best, the halacha will be accepted according to that opinion. And if some way later on someone was able to disprove the accepted halacha and show that really the accepted halacha is not the more correct opinion, right? Which ultimately in the time of Mashiach, we believe that, there's a medrash that we're going to follow Beis Shammai in the time of Mashiach, the halachas will be flipped. A lot of the halachas will be reversed, even though some of the things are accepted as facts based on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch itself is full of a lot of machlokas, but even those things which are accepted as facts in the Shulchan Aruch can possibly be overturned later on, because we'll gain a greater understanding of the machlokas between the different opinions and which opinion is the more correct opinion. That's what means Elu Elu Divrei Chaim. That's what Rav Papa is teaching you, as Rashi explains over here. We'd rather have two ma'muraim arguing about two different opinions about a halachic matter, in which case both of those opinions are valid opinions. One might be more correct, we might possibly like one, but they're both valid opinions. However, when you have two Amoraim stating different facts about what other people said, one of them is lying. You can't say Elu Elu Divrei Chaim about people, hearsay from somebody else. What did that person say? I think he said this, I think he said that. No, you can't say both of them are right. One of them got the facts correct, one of them got the facts wrong. They're not both valid points of contention. The Mishnah says, no sin l'psula shnei masar chodesh mishatava ba'al lefarnes yisatzma. Right? A woman who's never been married before, they get engaged, and then the husband says, you know what? Let's pick out a date. Let's pick out a date for our marriage. Right? He has 12 months. He has 12 months to ensure that. Well, she has 12 months in order to get herself ready, to get her linens ready, to get her makeup ready, to get her hair ready, to buy her shaitels, to buy her wedding gown. We're going to give also, if the woman wants to get married within 12 months, the man can defer and say, I have 12 months also. I have to get a nice suit. I have to get my Rolex watch. However, if you've been married already once, so you only have 30 days, because you don't have to be as beautiful a second time. And also, you know where to go. You know which stores to shop. And he gives Mamalonisu. The time came, 12 months came, and they weren't able to get married for whatever reason. One of them pushed off. The husband pushed off. Ochos mishlova, ochos betruma. The Gemara discussed what about the woman pushes off on Daf Beis, but it was an onesser happen. If the woman pushes off deliberately, so then she's not entitled to mizonah. She was the one who backed out. But if the man pushes it off, so she gets the ochos mishlova, ochos betruma. She is entitled for mizonos at that point. They're considered someone married. Just like a husband has to provide mizonos for his wife, so too he has to provide mizonos for this woman who is expected to get married after 12 months. But ochos betruma. And if she's a Yisraeli marrying a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma at that point. We'll see, Midaraisa is allowed to eat truma already from the engagement. But now, Midarabbanan, they're allowed to eat truma at that point. Truma, what do you give her for her mizona? Tarfon says you can give her entirely truma, which is cheaper. Rabbi Kiva Omer, mechsa chul and mechsa truma, you give her half, up to half you give her truma, the rest has to be chul. And a yavam, eno maichel b'truma, the yavam, right, if a person gets engaged to a woman, and then he dies, and obviously they don't have no children, not obvious. So they didn't have sex. They didn't live in Yehuda. So they weren't together. They didn't have any children. Now she wants to marry her. He's going to marry. The brother's going to marry her, right? Do you even want her? He can't, even though they're both Kohanim, these brothers. He's not Michael but Truma, even if he waits 12 months. Also, let's say she was engaged for 6 months, and then he died, and then another 6 months in front of the Yavam. That's 12 months. Even if one day was 11 months and 29 days, and the Baal, then the husband died, and then you have another day of the Yavam. Or they got engaged, the husband died, the supposed husband died at the first day of after the engagement, and then they waited another 11 months, 29 days in front of the Yavam. So that's 12 months. She's not allowed to eat Truma. Zu Mishnah Rishona, the previous halacha that you got to eat Truma after waiting 12 months, that's the original halacha, originally accepted halacha. Based on Shacharayan, later on, based on with Masake, and they made it to Kana Amru, top of Nanzainam and Beis, Eina Isha Achaz B'Truma Ashikanas the Chuppah, until she comes under the canopy bed. I'm just going to explain it the way I want to explain it, Chuppah. Until she comes under the canopy bed for foreplay, when they come home from the wedding. She is not allowed to eat Truma. Midrabanan, they're masaking that, right? Technically, even from the Eris, we're going to see she could eat Truma. The Gemara will explain why they wanted her to wait. The Gemara is Menani Mili. Where do we know this? That she gets 12 months. A psula gets 12 months, right, to go to the store and get the best deals on her wedding gown for $10,000. Amar Rav Chisda Dam Akra Vayomer Achea V'Ima Teishev Anara Itanu Yamim Asor. Right, when Yitzchak came to take Rivka, her Lavan had Suel had died, and Lavan was the brother and the mother. They said, let her stay for Yamim, days, or Asor, or 10. So my yom, what does this mean? Ilema trey yomi. Yom means simply just 2 days. Let her stay for 10 days. Mishtay inish hachi. Is that the way people talk? Amrulay trey yomi. First they suggest let her stay 2 days. Amrulu low, and the person says, no, I got to take her right away. Amrulay asar. Okay, so let her stay 10 days. Doesn't make any sense logically. The second has to be smaller than the first one. Elamai yamim shana. Yamim means a year. Yamim means a bunch of days, which constitutes a year. Yamim tiagulaso. We find elsewhere in the Torah it says for a year you can redeem it for a year. We're talking about Bate Arichoma. You sell a house in a walled city. Ema chodesh. Maybe yamim refers to a month. Chodesh yamim. It says elsewhere until a month full of days. So you see, yamim can mean a month. So the word is Amri Danin Yom Stam Danin Yom Stam Yom Shnerbim Chodesh. The first part of Yom Tegulasa was without any other thing modifying. Ad Chodesh Yomim, you have Chodesh modifying Yomim. So here by Rivka, where it says Yomim, it says Yomim plain without anything modifying it. We'll assume it means a whole year. And what is Asor? Asor then means 10 months. So anyway, a year. The point is that a year they request that she have at least a year to get married, to stay with the family in order to buy whatever she needs for the marriage. Amar Rabbi Yizera Tana bein hi ubein avia yichol la'akiv. If she gets engaged as a ktana and he's toveya her as a ktana to get married, a 9-year-old girl wants to get married, so even after 12 months pass, her or her father can say, no, we need more time. Bishlama ihi mati ma'akva. She's a young girl. She's not ready to get married. She got cold feet. If she wants to get married, why does the father care so much? No, the father's thinking now she doesn't know. She doesn't know what marriage is all about. She's going to get married as a young girl. She's not going to be able to withstand the pressures, the responsibilities of marriage, and she's going to leave her marriage and come back to my house. I have to deal with her and her psychological problems that pay for her psychiatric bills. We're going to see later that the Gemara is really basically saying this. Even though the father, the Gemara says Kedushin can marry his daughter off as a ktana, we generally don't do that. We don't marry off as a ktana to get her married. We don't, stipulate the parameters of their marriage, how much each family is going to give, in order to marry her off when she's a ktana. Let's see actually, you can talk about getting a ktana married. You can arrange her marriage at 3 years old and say at 17 she'll get married. Pshita, obviously you can do it. The same. Maybe once she hears at a 3-year-old she hears she can get married when she's 17, she already gets fearful, right? And she's going to come weak, and she'll have psychiatric problems even without getting into marriage. Kamashma, we're not worried about that. Let's say she became a Bulgaris, meaning she was 12 years old and 6 months. This previous Gemara was talking about, in the Mishnah was talking about a Nara or a Ktana. Now she's a Bulgaris, and then she got engaged. You don't give her 12 months. And the man, after the Kiddushin, he says, I want to get married to you. Only 30 days, like I'm on a Mesive. So then we're asking Rafuna, Bagra, Harehi Kitvua. If she was a Bulgaria, she's like a Tvua. My love, Kitvua de Psula. Doesn't mean like Tvua Psula, the regular Tvua. Okay, so Psula, virgin. Most women who get married, like the Gemara said on Daf It, Vav, Rov Nashim Basulas Nisos, Ted Zion. Ted Zion, the Vav, Kitvua de Psula. And the Gemara said, look, Kitvua de Almana. It's talking about Tvua, it's talking about an Almana, 30 days. Tashma, another proof. Bulgaris, Shashasa Shnemasar Chodesh. A Bulgaris that waits 12 months. Presumably she's waiting 12 months because she has 12 months to wait after they designate the wedding date, and 12 months to wait to get herself prepared for the wedding. Rabbi Lezer Omer Yafer. Once those 12 months elapse, so he's chayiv to feed her if they don't get married. Therefore, he's entitled, because he's given him his own, he's entitled to be made for her Nadarim by himself. And now Murasa, she's engaged, so the Mishnah in Nadarim says that the father and the Baal have to be made for Nadarim jointly. Once he's chayiv in his own, he's the only one that's made for Nadarim. So anyway, when you see from this brisa that a Bulgaria Hashas Shema Chodesh, she's waiting 12 months. Why is she waiting 12 months? Obviously, she's like a psula that gets 12 months, not 30 days. So the Gemara says, "Ema Bulgaris Vishashas Shema Chodesh." It's talking about two cases. Bulgaris gets 30 days. And Shas Shema Chodesh, as a Ktana or Naro, waits 12 months. But as Rama hold Yafer. In those two cases, then he'll be made for once he's chayav mizonos. Tashma. Hamare says a psula v'in shetava bal v'hi ma'akebes v'in shetava hi ubal ma'akev Nosin la shnei masar chodesh mishas tzviya, avalo mishas erusin. He gets engaged to a psula. Whether the husband wants to get married right away and she wants to delay, or she wants to get married, designated date, he wants to delay. You give 12 months, mishas hatzviya. Avalo mishas erusin. Not, you don't calculate 12 months when they got engaged. You have to calculate 12 months when they start picking a wedding date. Ubagra harei ketvua. Bulgaris, she's like a tvua. Ketzad. What does that mean? Bagra yom echad. If she becomes Bulgaris, she's 12 years old in 6 months, v'niskacha, and then she got engaged. Nosin la shnei masar chodesh. Ularusa shloshim yom. So if she became a Bulgaris and then she became niskacha, so it says explicitly in this brisa she gets 12 months. Not like Rav Huna, she has only 30 days. Arusa shloshim yom. Whatever the end of this brisa is unclear. We'll explain it in a second. Arusa gets 30 days. And from the first part, you have to do Rav Huna, it's a refutation of Rav Huna. It says that once she becomes Kudeshes, even after Baga, she gets 12 months. So the Gemara asks, what did the end of the brisa mean? Well, the Rosh Hashanah, Rav Pabach, Yom Bulgaris, Avro Lesh, Nemasar Chodesh, Bagros, Miniskacha, Nosla, Shoshem Kalmana. Yes, if she becomes Niskadesh right after becoming a Bulgaris, then she gets 12 months. However, if she became a Bulgaris, then she waited 12 months. Now she's 13 years and 6 months. And then she gets engaged, then the halacha follows Rav Huna partially. In that case, not a 12-year-old in 6 months, but 13-year-old in 6 months, then she would only get 30 days to furnish for herself whatever she needs for the wedding from the day that they circled for their wedding date. The Mishnah says if that time came, they didn't get married, so she could technically eat truma. So Amar Ula says, really, even from the engagement, she's engaged to a Kohen. She could eat truma already. A Kohen buys for himself something with his money. It's not directly talking about Kiddushin, but one of the ways of acquiring a woman is Kiddushin, is Kesef. It's one of the 3 ways of acquiring a woman. So when he acquired her at the Kiddushin, at the Erusin, so he's already, she belongs to him. Once she belongs to him, it's property. So therefore she could eat truma. Matam amru eno chelas. What's the reason she can't eat truma? Because generally, until she gets married, she stays in her father's house. So he's going to send a bottle of wine. He's send a nice gift to her for Shabbos, Baron Herzog wine, like Yaakov Shwekey's song. They're going to send her a bottle of wine, of truma, right? Baron Herzog Truma edition, the vintage edition. You got the Truma edition. So she's going to pour at the Shabbos table to her father and her brothers and sisters, and they're Yisraelim. It's a problem. She could eat, but not her family. Nami. So what happens after 12 months? Also, she's also going to be with her family. If it's 12 months from the wedding date, he'll buy for her, he'll rent her a yechida, rent her a nice apartment so she can feel independent. She's not going to be near her family. Let's say a Kohen gets hired by Yisrael to work in his field. He shouldn't be allowed to eat truma because maybe he'll spend his break in the house of his employer, who's Yisrael, and he'll feed him some truma. No. When you're hired by somebody else, he's the one in charge of feeding you. You're not going to feed him. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Rav Yehuda Amar Mishum Simfo. And the reason that she can't eat after Erusin is because we're concerned that he's going to find a mum. He's going to find a blemish, not on the outside of her body, on the inside of her, under her clothes, in the part of her body that's normally covered by clothes, and find a bad scar or something like that. And he's not going to want to get married. He's going to mevatel the kiddush, mevatel the marriage, and therefore once he retroactively annuls the marriage, the kiddushin, it turns out that she's Israeli, eating truma. She's chayav misub de'shamayim. The Mishnah Achrona says once she goes into the chuppah, onto the canopy bed, so she's entitled to truma. Shouldn't he have to wait till the actual bia? Whereas Zasam mivdak badikla v'hader ma'ayil. And when they're engaged in foreplay, he takes her clothes off, so he sees anyway for the bia. El ma'ata eved kohen shalachum Yisrael l'leichel b'truma. An eved kohen, right? A Yisrael owns an eved. He sells him to a kohen. So once the kohen buys him, that's the real kinyan kaspa the pasuk is talking about. An eved kain, he buys him. He should be able to eat truma mishum simphon. If you're worried about simphon, You might find a blemish with the Eved, and you'll retroactively annul the sale, and they'll be eating Truma unlawfully. Right? There's no real concern of finding a blemish by an Eved. If it's on the outside of his body, he sees it on his hands or his feet that are exposed. And if it's a blemish, he has a scar under his clothes. You can't retroactively void the sale because you need him for his work. You don't care if he has scars on his body. He doesn't care about a scar under his clothes. Let's say he's finding out that this Eved is a thief or he's a kobiustus. Well, it turns out like Tosfos, he's a gambler, right? And he's not going to want a guy. It doesn't make a difference. Most avodim kanainim are thieves. They steal and they gamble. So it's your fault. You can't void the transaction. You can list him. What are you going to say? List him mezuyah mukhla malchus. Maybe this Eved is a really bad guy. He's convicted of armed robbery, or he's already convicted of capital offenses. He's waiting the death penalty, and they're going to avoid the transaction because I just paid for an Eved that's going to be killed. Hanu kala islahu, such grievous offenses. Everyone heard about them, so there's no consideration that maybe he's going to be one of these things. Michti bein lamar lo achla. According to both Ula's reasoning and according to the other reasoning of Simphon, she can't eat as an arusa. My benayu. What is maybe the practical ramification between them? Ika benayu kibel maser v'halach. Right. The first nafkamina, if the husband knows about blemishes and he still wants to get married to her, so he can no longer void the marriage. According to the first reason, that she's living in her father's house, you have the problem. The second nafkamina, the maser v'halach are really the same thing. Is that we said only nichsa l'chuppah v'lo nivla. When she goes to the chuppah, then there's foreplay, so he sees what he needs to see. So therefore, there's no problem of mumim of blemish. However, there would be a problem. His maser b'halach, he gives her over, walking down the aisle. He gives her over to the shluchei habal, or the shluchei hab walk with the shluchei habal. All four parents escort her down the aisle. It doesn't make a difference. In those cases, she's not nichsa l'chuppah v'lo nivla. So in those cases, she's no longer with her family anymore, so there's no problem of Ula, but there is a problem because she wasn't on the chuppah yet, and he could void it because of a mum, bifnim, begavai, a private blemish, a private scar, a bad scar under her clothes. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where we're going to really delve into how, ksuva daraisa, ksuva derabanan. There's three parts to the same din daraisa or derabanan of ksuva of masayim for almana, of psula and amana for almana. You're not going to miss this. This is really fundamental understanding the whole concept of ksuva. Check it out. Coming up next.